Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Tai. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really cool guest today. He's a philosopher and modern day visionary. His name is Abraham Bawumia, and he even offers a 30-day challenge to help change your mindset and upgrade your life in whatever way you need it to be. So thank you so much for being here today, Abraham.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love learning about mindset shifts and all of that. So why don't you share with our guests a little bit about you and what you do and what you offer?
What I do is I'm actually a high-end events host. I created my own events company called Messiah Parties. And the slogan I have is, it's the biggest and baddest networking event in the UK. And then I'm going to take it globally. I've also set something called the 30-day challenge. And the 30-day challenge is the idea of being delusional for 30 days. And the reason why I call it 30 days of being delusional is because I've had a lot of people say to me, I am really inspired by your content. And yeah, I wish I could actually be brave enough to really go for my dreams and then chase after my dreams like you do. And then I'll say to them, okay, so what is it that you want to do, if you don't mind disclosing? And then they'll say what they want to do. And then I'll ask them, okay, what you said to me, struggle to chase after that dream, not accomplish it, to just chase after it. So what is holding you back? And they'll say, oh, I'm worried about other people calling me delusional. So then, or saying that I'm like an idiot for chasing this. Then I'll say, okay, then why don't you just be delusional and embrace it? Like, who cares? If a person says to you, you're delusional, your attitude should be, okay, yeah, I'm delusional. And there shouldn't be an anger towards people who think you're delusional. You should embrace that that's what comes with it, because it's only delusional until it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like how you just said people who talk about chasing after their dreams instead of just like reaching it, because it's so funny. Just the phrasing of that, it does sound like you're constantly chasing the dangled carrot without actually reaching it, right? And I think that that's a lot of people who are going after their goals and their dreams. It feels like that. And it's so funny when you think about just the phrasing of things. When you say chasing after it, it does sound like you're never going to get it just by that phrase alone. And then the delusional aspect, I also appreciate, because that makes you think of authenticity. And, when you're authentic, you're not really worried about what other people think about what you're doing. You're just doing what feels good. It feels aligned with you, versus like being caught up in the, what people think about what I'm doing. And most people are afraid of breaking out of the box that we were given by society. Society says, stay in this box and you're fine. If you break out, then it's like you said, you're delusional. What's wrong with you? You're crazy. But once you're successful at it, then everyone's like in awe of you. So, you know what I mean? It's like that double-edged sword of, you have to kind of not worry about what they think, because it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So I do like how you change things up a little bit with the wording, the verbiage that you use.
Absolutely, because the way I look at it is, your words are powerful. The way you say certain things is everything. If you're like, oh, chasing, I want to chase this, then you're going to be, not only are you going to be forever chasing, because you're saying you're chasing, and you're saying wanting, well, you're going to be forever wanting. It has to be a feeling of like you already have it, like you're already that person, and you can't achieve it unless you feel inside like you're already that person.
Yeah, and I've definitely heard similar philosophies from like Abraham Hicks, for instance. And there's another, I don't remember his name, but there's another person who has something called the Abundance Project. And it's really similar. His story is basically he started living every day as if he was already doing what he loved, even though he was just a waiter at a restaurant at the time. But it totally changed his life. And then within a short amount of time, it was just kind of fell into his lap. He just was given this idea of this is what you want, here you go. But it was because he was living every day from the mindset of I already have that thing. So I'm not wanting, or I'm not like in a bad mood. I'm going to live my life in the like the mentality and in the mood set and doing the best that I can in the work that I have in front of me as if I'm doing what I love already. And then it just like, so it's that same idea of like, you have to basically embody what you want in the future.
100%. You have to feel like you have it already. And I've learned it in lots of things I've done. So even when I've stepped on stage and done comedy, and initially the idea of going on stage, I was feeling like, well, this is going to be crazy, just this idea of doing this. But I did it and I smashed it. And the only reason why I did it is because I just assumed that it was going to go well. I didn't know where it came from. I just knew I wanted to get it over and done with. So I had the approach to it as in my head, there's no chance of this failing. I'm just going to go out and do it. And when I stepped on stage, so again, I was kind of doing it unconsciously, all of this. I wasn't as big into spirituality back then as I am now and been on this journey. So when I even stepped on stage, I felt the fear, but I committed to it. And I wasn't second guessing myself. What stops people, the whole idea of I want this but I'm not there, I'm not that level, is you're going to keep approaching it as if you're not that level. So if you were thinking of, let's say, two people in a combat sport, just an example, if you get killed, if you are wanting the ability to win, because you approach the fight as if you don't know if you could get your opponent, you're second guessing yourself. And in combat sports, they say you have to be committed. You have to be committed to being that person already, being that person who wins a fight. Like if you watch all the showdowns that happen, like before they fight, they speak in absolutes. Now, the fighter who loses may look like an idiot for saying that I've won this fight, because people will go back to the tape where you say, if you won this fight, why don't you say, oh, I believe I can win this fight. They say, I know I've won this fight, because they have to convince their subconscious mind so that when they get in the ring, they perform as someone who is on that level. They have to believe it already before it happens.
Yeah, I'm so curious because I think most people, before doing something big, like going on stage, for instance, right, or doing something out of their comfort zone, I think it's kind of natural to second guess and to kind of like question how it's going to turn out. Even if it does turn out well, it's like going into it like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is really scary. And then you were mentioning how, like, on a subconscious level, it didn't even occur to you that you could fail. So it was just like, well, I'm just going to get it done. I'm going to make it happen, and it's going to be great. Like, that's just what I already kind of have as a mentality. So like, what was your upbringing like? Did you have parents that kind of modeled this idea to you that if you want it, you can achieve it without the second guessing aspect? Or is that something you had to learn as you were growing up? Like, well, where did that, because you said it's more subconscious, which makes me think it's more of a natural way to fall back on. I'm just curious, like how that happened, like what was your upbringing like, if that was something that was modeled to you?
It wasn't my parents. Like, they actually, even like when it came to certain things, they weren't. Well, I'll say my dad in particular was more like a person who would talk about thinking realistically, like with everything. Is like, oh no, like when it comes to goals and dreams, you have to just be realistic. That's what he was like when we were growing up. But for some reason, I never thought about thinking realistic. I don't know why, because I was always told that, no, you just be realistic. Like, if you shoot for your dreams, like, you realize other people are shooting for their dreams and it just won't happen. I just never adopted that mindset. And now as an adult, like, yeah, he now is like, okay, fair enough, he's doing what he's doing. So now he's more relaxed and accepting of it. But back then, nah, it was something that I had to learn by myself. And I do find it is very interesting, because a lot of people do think that I was born with it, or that I was given this genetic gift. But I've been through a lot of my doubts. But there is something that always been inside me, which is a stubbornness to just not give up. It's just like, And it might be because in my mind I just can't imagine myself living a life that I don't want to live. Like anything I've done in life, it's usually what I've wanted to do. I've always thought, okay, this will be something I'd like to at least try, and then I keep practicing or doing what needs to be done until I get it done.
So I find that so interesting because it's almost like you did the exact opposite of how you were modeled then. You were modeled to follow more of the play it safe kind of idealism. And I think that that's kind of the older paradigm too of like, you don't want to, and I mean, not to say like everyone is ready to jump into this new idea of you can have it all, but I think that's more of a newer concept versus like back in the day, probably when your dad was raised, that was like, you really didn't step outside the box. Now more and more people are finding the courage to do so, but probably not back in his day. So I just find it interesting that you were modeled his side, which is like the older paradigm, but you had it kind of innately in you, like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I really love that. But I think I just find that really interesting how it wasn't what you were modeled, but it was more like your authentic code that kind of pushed you in that direction.
Yeah, that's what it was for me. And sometimes I really want to know why, because I do trace my thoughts back to my childhood, and I'd like to understand a bit more of why I was able to just as a kid be like, well, I just can't live that realistic lifestyle, because I was just because when he was saying it, I was just thinking no. I was a kid, I didn't know any better, but in my head, I just went no.
So do you feel like you found your purpose in the work that you're doing with the being a philosopher and modern day visionary and the 30-day challenge and all of that? Do you feel like you found your purpose in that work?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It was a journey of wanting, not understanding where I was actually going. So I, at first, tried many different things. I've done comedy. I started training kickboxing and boxing as well. I developed my skills there. And then I started doing a lot of like entertainment stuff, like male entertainment stuff. And those sort of things, I was just like dabbling in different things to understand who I was and what I really wanted to do. One thing that I've been doing since forever is I've always spoke positively to people, and when it came to going after their goals and dreams, I've always been that way. And when I really got onto this specific journey is I was dabbling around and thinking, okay, well, I mean, where do I really want to go? I talk a lot about goals and dreams. A lot of people tell me that I'm gifted at multiple things. And it was only when some people were saying, have you ever really just thought about becoming like a positivity motivational speaker? And I had it in the back of my mind that, okay, I could get into it. I saw a guy who was actually going out on the streets and talking to people about achieving their goals and dreams. He does like these film interviews. And that was something that made me think, okay, I'm going to do my own version. So I'm not going to copy him. I'm going to do my own version of this, where I talk to people about the mindset that will accomplish your goals and dreams. And yeah, I've tried many different things in terms of, I used to look at motivational things and think, okay, you have to just harness a sort of energy to do this. And I would feel that, okay, if I'm going to be pumped and motivated, maybe I have to feel aggressive when doing it. So I think that, okay, maybe feeling aggressive is the key. And I then learned, because I was learning more about myself, I then learned, okay, all the feeling aggressive does is it puts you in a weird sort of energy where if you're trying to make sales or network with people, it doesn't necessarily yield you as much results as initially as I thought it was, because maybe I'd watched a lot of motivational speakers and it seemed like they're like, oh, you got to be pumped. And I started trying to play with my energy a bit. And what I started noticing was I would always get results when I naturally felt relaxed, when I felt relaxed and I wasn't tense and I wasn't trying too hard. So it's when I'm working on the activity, but I'm not trying too hard is when I'd find the most results. And since it's been pretty much been like my biggest discovery up to date. So it was something that I thought I needed to share with everyone. And then I was thinking, okay, then this is the field that I would love to move into. And even with the events that I do as well, I'm looking to bring in events that are more catered towards spirituality, is like retreats and things like those. I'm looking to venture into that field as well.
So what you're speaking to really is, I think the older paradigm is we be successful at anything if you're aggressive and you just go for it. And that's true to a point. You can definitely find success if you are diligent enough and push yourself enough. But the difference between that and what you're talking to is like more of living from alignment. Because when you're living from alignment, now you also have that happiness piece, that joy piece, that this just feels like me piece, right? Versus the I'm going to have to push and do all this stuff and I'm successful. And there's a lot of people who do that who aren't even happy, who have reached all the goals and not done all the things, but they're not happy in what they're doing. They just reach the goal. And so I love that what you've discovered is it's more than just reaching the goal. It's actually finding your fluidity in that and your, sense of self in that and your sense of alignment in that. And I really think that that is what is like why we're here. We're not here to fit in someone else's box. We're here to reach our own success at what we do best and what feels good to us. And so it sounds like you really, and the other thing too is you also kind of tapped into what I call my definition of purpose, right? Which I believe is something that lights you up. It's something you can do all day long. You just love it. So it already kind of feeds your soul and it's helping the world at the same time. And so in this, what you're describing too is you found something that you just love and now you want to share it with the world, which is the part where you're helping people. So you're helping yourself and them at the same time. You know what I mean? And I also love how, when you were inspired to be a motivational speaker, instead of trying to do what that other person was doing or trying to jump on the same bandwagon, you're like, I like the idea, but I'm gonna make it my own. And I love that too, because that's really, I think, again, we're not here to copy anyone else. We're here to be authentic and use our own divine skills to help other people. That's going to show up differently for everybody. So yeah, that's pretty incredible that you were able to navigate I'm going to go be successful to I'm going to be successful, but I'm going to do it in my arena that feels good to me.
When it came down to it, like looking at like all these different things that I've done in my life, which made people pin me as talented, like operating, as you said, on that frequency of happiness, feeling happy and actually wanting to do it is the thing that makes you be able to actually get through any objective, any goal that you have. Like I remember when I was first like learning kickboxing, and when I first started sparring, one person said I didn't hit him on the chin once, and in my head I was like, okay, well, that's cool. I'm just gonna train as much as possible until I do. And the thing is, when I was training, it was with the idea of learning. My mind was so open to the idea of I can really, 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 really develop as much as I possibly could. At times, did I have some doubts of how much I could develop? At times, it did come into my head because when you're getting whooped by everyone in sparring, that does happen. But then I was still loving it. And since I was loving it, me loving it and made it not a chore. When you don't love it, you start to view it as a chore. It's difficult to develop. And since I was like, I love doing this, I was coming in the morning and then at night. I would always come in like first thing in the morning and then I'd come in at night. So dedicated I was. And since I love to do it, my development was rising rapidly. And to the point where I started whooping people who would whip me in sparring, and including the person who initially made that comment of I didn't hit him in the chin once. It got to a point where the sparring sessions were very one-sided, like in my favor. And people were saying, okay, I think it seems like you've just got the genetics and the ability to just naturally develop like that. And what I was explaining to them was it's not necessarily, if their genetics involved, their genetics involved. But what I was explaining to them is it was actually because I love doing it. I was like, no, because I love doing it. I'm in here first thing in the morning and then I quickly make it to an evening session and train as well. It's because I loved doing it. So, and because I loved it, I was so open-minded. My mind, it's not a chore. My brain is seeing a world where I can learn absolutely everything. It's Bruce Lee made a comment, a statement, a popular statement about having an empty cup. Now, if you show up with your cup full, meaning your mindset isn't one of I'm open to the idea that I can expand my horizons and keep developing. You come show up with a cup that's half full or full, you're limiting your potential for growth. Whereas if you come showing up with an empty cup, you are open to the idea that you can learn beyond your wildest horizons.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
I love the empty cup analogy too. I don't think I've heard that before, but that makes sense. If it's empty, you have space now to take in new information. And then your point too, that you just loved it. So it was a labor of love, basically, this desire to learn and grow. And so, yeah, I love that. So with the work that you do, I know that you're, as of right now, like you just kind of are really good at when people mention struggles that they have, you're really good at kind of hearing them out and then helping them refocus, then shift their mindset. What's like the biggest struggle that you hear the most? And what advice do you have for that particular struggle?
So the biggest struggle I hear the most is, well, firstly, a lot of people make excuses. They say, oh, I'm inspired and I'm going to do my 30-day challenge. But the thing is, I don't know when to do it. Then I'll say, start tomorrow. Tomorrow is day one. Set your plan, your entire plan tonight, and then start tomorrow. Then they'll start to say, oh, well, then again, I don't have an idea what I want to do. Also, with work, I'm caught up like doing this, that, and the other. And they'll come up with like 50 excuses. And then I'll tell them that these excuses that I'm hearing is actually just uncertainty. I'm like, it's got nothing to do with like you caught up in work or anything like that. The truth is you're just in fear. So you got to understand what the idea of fear, where it's coming from. And I'll have these conversations. I'll say, how many times do you say you're going to do something tomorrow, next week, and you never get it done? If you're being honest with me, you do that all the time. I can tell based on this conversation. And they'll say yes. I'll be honest with you. I do it all the time. And then I'll say, okay, the idea of you doing that is really, it's fear. You're actually scared of the idea of even going after it. And what it is in their head, they pedestalize their goal so high, because I catch it in their language the more we speak. They've put their goal on a pedestal up here, and they put their own abilities down here. Now, if you're seeing your goal as up here, there's one thing I always tell people: if you see your goal up here and yourself down here, you're not going to accomplish that goal, because you have to be either see yourself as level as your goal, you have to see yourself as the same level as your goal, or you have to see yourself above your goal. When your goal in your head is so far above you, of course you're going to struggle to really put in 100% effort, because absolutely no one on this planet likes doing activities that they think is a waste of time and is going absolutely nowhere. It's how we're hardwired. So if you in your head see your goal up here, yourself down here, you think that's the new year, new me phenomenon. People set a New Year's resolution and they give up in February because in their own mind, they see their goal up here and they see themselves down here. So if they're forever chasing that goal, the only way they're going to be able to get up every day, feel excited about doing it, go to bed, wake up the next day, be ready to go after it again. The only way they could be consistent at it is them viewing themselves on the same level or above their goal. It has to be a goal that your mind has decided that this is very, very achievable for you. Otherwise, you're just never going to really put in all the effort that you need to.
That is really beautiful advice. And I think so relatable. And everyone listening could probably definitely think of a time that either they're there now or they've been there where they felt like the goal they wanted was unattainable. So I like that idea because, yeah, if you're thinking that you're here and your goal's here, it feels impossible. It feels like, well, I'm not capable of making it anyway, versus if you're seeing it as equal, I know that there's like, at least in my end, my thoughts would be like, well, I'm not good enough yet. Like, I don't know the skill yet. But when you're equal with it, that basically, when you have the mindset of me and my goal are here, that's basically is putting you in this place of, I don't know what I need to know yet, but I'm more than capable of doing it. It's just like, you already know you can. You just have to learn it, and then you have to be open to learning it, kind of like showing up with the empty cup. And so I love that. And it's just the mindset shift, right? That's the hardest part, is not tricking the mind, but like basically shifting it to a different perspective than what we're used to and what society tells us and what we're conditioned to believe and all of that. So that is really beautiful advice. I hope that listeners really, take that to heart, because I know all of us have goals. All of us want something different in our life. And it really is. And I've heard this time and time again, it's just the mindset shift. And how can you view it differently or phrase it differently, kind of like instead of chasing after it. So with everything that you are doing now, what's one lesson that you've learned so far that you feel like everyone should learn? So I know you've already given us a lot of different nuggets of wisdom, so far, but what's something that you've learned throughout your lifetime up to this point that you really feel like everyone else should learn too?
The idea of shifting your identity is a very, very big thing. And the idea of being on level with your goal is, a lot of people have this idea of, oh, maybe if I do affirmations, I just keep saying affirmations. But the thing is, your brain is smarter than that. Your subconscious mind is a lot smarter than just saying like, oh, affirmations and I'll believe it. Yeah, that could work after a long, long time. But that development, if you see your goals up here, is still slow. Whereas if you came up with reasons why you could accomplish that goal, then that development is faster, or you might actually see yourself as level. So that it should be, instead of I am hitting this goal, or I can hit this goal, or I will hit this goal, it should be I will hit this goal because, and then you have the reason. So one thing I advise to people is write down a list, come up with a list of all the reasons why you can do it. So you should have your own list of successes. So looking back at your entire life's history, you will find things that you accomplished that you were surprised that you accomplished. Like things you'll be like, oh, I remember when I did this and that surprised me. I'll remember when I did that and that surprised me. And when you start writing down everything in your life that you doubted you could do, but managed to do it, and you were surprised and you were like, oh my gosh, I did this. I can't believe I did this. Writing down all of those and attaching those to your affirmations is the most powerful thing that you could do, because it's now your mind is not listening to you just saying, oh, I can do this, or I will do this, or I am this. It's you're rewiring your subconscious mind to actually see yourself as this person. I'm the person who's done this. I can accomplish this. I will accomplish this goal because I'm the person who's done this. I will accomplish that goal because I'm the person who's done this. And you're attaching all of these I am affirmations to because I've done this, this, and this. So you've got the reasoning faculties.
I really hope that listeners are taking that in right now, because wow, I don't think I've ever heard of that suggestion before. I've definitely heard of like writing down your own affirmations, but again, it usually stops at I will reach this. Like what you're suggesting is you find what you're already good at. You find your own skill sets. You find the things that make that you already believe in yourself with, and then use that as a way to believe that, yeah, I could totally do this goal because I'm all these other things. And not only, I love that because it allows you to take evidence, right? Like evidence from your life that you already know you're capable because you've done XYZ, and then that evidence is what helps you understand that, yeah, I could totally do this. There's no reason why I can't do this, because I have all these successes that I can now lean on and trust in my own abilities because I've done that before. And this is just a newer version of that same thing, right? Never heard of that before, but that is so powerful.
Yeah, and it's a very big thing, because like people see themselves as failures a lot of the time. People are operating unconsciously on why they can't do it, because naturally they look at all the things that all the times they failed, and these failures are not actual failures, they're just learning experiences. But people look at all those learning experiences that they've been conditioned to view as failures, as a time they failed. They view all of those and they're attaching those every day to who they are. But when you read that list of successes, your entire list, you realize that you are actually a success already. And when you start attaching that to your list of successes, you start to view yourself in an entirely different light.
This idea is again, it's that idea of, I already believe that it's possible. And I know that because of, what I already believe to be true based on the past and what I've already succeeded at. So yeah. From here, I love to switch to what I like to call synchronicity story time. I love synchronicity stories. They're very cool. And it kind of brings spirituality into the mix, because then it helps you understand that there's like something bigger at work, right? The breadcrumbs and the signs. Do you have anything like that that either pertains to the work that you're doing, or just in general, some really cool synchronicity story that you can explain?
Yeah, I mean, actually, the guy that I mentioned about who I saw his content before, in my head, I thought, I'm going to come across this guy one day. I don't know why I thought that way. I wasn't even thinking of at a networking event. I could, in my head, I don't know what made me think like this. I just felt like one day I was going to bump into him, that I'll be walking down the street and I'll just bump into him or see him. And a few weeks ago, just out of nowhere, it might have been a month ago, I saw him, but he had his whole camera crew and everything. And in my head, I was thinking, wait, it felt like something out of a movie, because I don't know why I thought I would just one day see this guy. And I wanted to speak to him and say, I manifested you. Like, I manifested you, like this moment right now. I wanted to speak to him, but he was busy with like the camera crew filming and everything like that. So, but in my head, it just tells me that, yeah, probably that there's going to be a time I'm going to bump into him again. And then we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to say to him, hey, like, I actually was watching your content and it really did spark my direction in creating my own content within this field. That for me was definitely a big one. And I've had many big ones. Like even the comedy on stage was big, like very big. Like becoming a very confident person where I could go out and speak to anyone without having any alcohol or drugs in my system is a very big thing as well. I manifested. I saw it in my head. I just saw it in my head. And years ago, like in fact, I'll say 11 years ago, 12 years ago, I was completely the opposite. Like, it was completely the opposite. I was someone who felt like I would have considered myself a very shy person. But I didn't get any coaching or anything. That idea didn't even pop into my head. I just decided that I was going to do it. And it happened. There's been a lot of things that I couldn't explain. And it did feel a bit like it was out of a movie that I just bumped into, that I just came across that guy, because just been watching his content and I just felt like one day we're going to speak. I don't know where the idea came from, but seeing him was like in the daytime was a very big eye opener.
That's very kismet. It's very much like, it sounds like you were kind of meant to bump into him, not only because, you're validating this feeling of, I don't know why, but I think I'm gonna meet him, and then you do, or not meet him, but see him on the street and you do. But also it's like in the field that you want to be in, it's almost like a sign that you're right where you're supposed to be. And so I love stories like that. There was one, like another podcaster, big podcaster. Her name is Sahara Rose. She did the same thing with Deepak Chopra. She wanted him to write the, what is it called? The forward in her book. And she just kind of had that same, like, I don't know. I know I want to ask him. I know whatever. And it was the same thing. She just knew what was going to happen, even though she had no contact with him. He was way, way bigger than she was in her podcast. And it just like happened. So it's similarly, it sounds like you just knew. You don't know where that's coming from, but you're trusting, like, okay, well, maybe it'll show up. And then it did. And that was almost like a sign of, okay, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And so, yeah, you keep doing this work, you probably will talk to him and maybe even do something bigger or collaborate, possibly. Sky's the limit with how things are going, and wherever you want to go with this work. So I do like to end with one final question. Do you feel like everyone has a purpose?
I feel like everyone has a purpose. The thing is, people don't discover that purpose because they're too busy trying to copy everyone else, and they don't actually know why they're doing it. It's unconscious programming that I call it. So a lot of people refer to the common day person as an NPC. I think they can be conditioned out of it. I'm a true believer that everyone can be conditioned out of it and to find their purpose. All they really have to do is start really talking to themselves, having this self-talk, and be like, okay, so the things I do, what I'm working toward, why am I doing it? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I think the way I think? Why do I operate exactly the way I operate? So I journal a lot. I journal every day. I journal every day without fail. And when you journal a lot, you talk to yourself a lot, you start to get a better understanding of how you think and why you do the things that you do. And once you get that understanding of why you do what you do, it will give you a better understanding of who you are, and you'll start to question if what you're doing is something that you've been limited to, or could you do more? You start to really question like yourself. So even in the times when I procrastinate, when I was procrastinating, it was uncertainty. It was me not really being certain whether I had a purpose or not. So I think, and now I've discovered my purpose, and I'm in the happiest state that I could ever have been in. So I personally believe everyone has a purpose, but they just don't know it yet. Like 95% of people probably don't know it.
I agree with that 100%. It's really, and what you're saying is so important. It's about knowing yourself. The more you know yourself, the more you know what lights you up. What's your why? What's something that excites you? And then on the flip side, what gives back to the world at the same time? And like the work that you do, and it's helping people wake up, right? It's helping them see the bigger picture. So yeah, thank you so much for the work that you do and putting yourself out there and sharing your visionary and philosophy with us. I mean, I'm taking notes because there's just so much wisdom here and things that I haven't heard before, similar but different, like a different take on things. But it was like I've had little many aha moments in this conversation. So thank you so much for being here and talking with me and chatting with me. If our listeners want your 30-day challenge, you say you offer that, and like if they want to speak to you or get to know you or learn more about what you offer, where would they find you?
So they could find me on LinkedIn at Abraham Bawumia, or Instagram Abranation. So it's ABRANATION on Instagram. And I post every day on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to speak to people. I have people who actually send me messages. Some people even send me voice notes, and they say to me, "Hey, Abraham, I really appreciate your content. You are really motivating me and inspiring me." And another thing, and I'm always happy to speak to people, because some people think that I'm probably gonna be too busy to respond, which is nonsense. I respond to anyone who's really inspired by what I do and they're asking questions. I'm always happy to respond to them. I have some who even send me messages about starting their 30-day challenges, and they've started it. So they'll send me a message, day 1, this is what happened. Day 2, this is what happened. And some people even send their own voice notes of what they're doing. They saying how they feel during the challenge. But I'm like, oh, okay, but this person's actually doing it. So I'm always happy to give tips. So I always respond giving like a few tips here and there of maybe if they go into detail of why, like how they feel during the challenge, then I'm always happy to give them tips and tricks in order to really help them guide themselves towards success during their challenge.
So listeners, if you have any questions or any of that, like that, I will make sure to put the links for both LinkedIn and Instagram in the show notes. So you guys don't have to like look too far to find him and reach out to him. So thank you so much for being here today. This has been such a really like educating conversation and I so appreciate it. Is there any last words you'd like to share before we end our conversation?
Thank you for having me. And yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out and, getting me to put my message across to the people. And yeah, you have a very good podcast. You have a great mission, a great goal. And yeah, I think in this field, us putting out these sort of messages and ideas will make the world a better place for people who tune in and listen and really apply these things.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I love that. And that's why I'm doing what I do. My podcast, I'm focusing on finding purpose because I want someone to listen to this who maybe never thought about their purpose and realize that no, there's one buried in them too. And, start to help wake people up and all that aspect. So thank you for that feedback. I so appreciate it. And again, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you're wanting more, consider joining our free Facebook community called Spirit Journey Collective, your haven for spiritual exploration and personal growth. Dive into a supportive community where sharing spiritual experiences is encouraged. Unlock the power of intuition, embark on a journey of self-discovery, and connect with like-minded souls. If this sounds like a community you'd love to plug into, the link is in the show notes below. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.